And hello all, welcome to this ninth edition of Will I Like It interviews. Today I have something a little bit special. You may know this person in the movie community, but he's got a bit of a past that some may or may not know about. And today we're just going to refer him as Sanddog. It's a good friend, Luke. Welcome him to the show, or welcome yourself to the show. Luke, why don't you say hello to everybody?
Hello, we're here to talk about my very sordid and dark past, and I'm happy to talk about it.
Yes. He independent wrestler is a fair term to call it.
Not for me, no. I would say because an independent wrestler would be someone who got paid to wrestle.
Okay. So amateur wrestler is a
No, because then amateur implies that you can actually wrestle, like for real, you know.
No, I think you're being hard on yourself. I've seen some stuff. You're an amateur wrestler, if that's the most polite way to put it. Then,
Well, the term that I would definitely always use is backyard wrestler.
Wrestler.
It has the stigma, but I don't shy away from it. So,
okay,
I think that's the correct term, even though most of my wrestling didn't really take place in any backyards, or as we would say in the UK, back gardens. So. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it, back garden wrestling.
Okay, so your name is Luke Ryan, but your wrestling alias was Sanddog. How did that come to be?
That's an interesting one. You might appreciate this, and I've tried to kind of, in later years, find some evidence for this, and I'll be fucked if I can find anything on it. But it was in late 2004. I was looking for a wrestling name. I was about to start with this fed, and I was like, "Oh shit, I need a name." Haven't got anything. Browsing the internet, the new trailer for Star Wars Episode 3 had just come out. You know the Lord Vader. Right. We had to get the Star Wars reference in there straight away. Bang, boom, out of the gate. Okay.
A wrestling thing. We're still talking about Star Wars.
And I read a piece of trivia somewhere. I'm certain that trailer was shipped to cinemas under the code name Sanddogs.
I know that because I actually received it as such. That's so funny, yeah.
And so I thought, take the S off, Sanddog. And I literally thought this will be like, I'll use it for this week, and then I'll come up with a better one for the week after, and then I just got lazy, and that was it for the next, almost 10 years, really.
That's so funny. I don't know why that didn't add up with me. If your name was Blue Harvest, it would have been a bit stickier. But yeah, that was when I worked at a movie theater, that was the one Star Wars movie that I actually was working at a theater for, and I actually signed for that print. That's so funny. Sanddogs. That's well, good for you. Good for you getting these Star Wars stuff in early too.
Oh yeah, and it's interesting because I can guarantee there's probably about 10 or 15 people out there who, if they saw me now on the street, they'd go, "Hey, Sanddog," straight away. And it's one of those things where it's a terrible name for a wrestler. Like, what does it mean? It's awful. But it's that repetition thing, isn't it? If you just repeat something, it just becomes a part of your normal. If you take any word, and just look at it and stare at it for like 10 minutes, it'll start to seem weird, right?
It stopped making sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just stuck, and that was it, really. So. Sanddog. I don't know. There's no good story. There's no meaning behind it. There's no.
Yeah, it's pretty good enough to me. I would say. Yeah. So why wrestling? What got you into it? What made you want to do it? What?
Well, that's a long story. I'll try and give you an abridged version, but I'd grown up loving it as a kid. Found some friends who enjoyed it as well. And I think anyone who was a kid and liked wrestling and had friends who liked wrestling, they would wrestle around with each other, Or if you didn't have the friends, you'd wrestle around with your pillow. You kind of act it out and stuff. Don't try this at home, but you're not going to heed that advice. You're definitely going to have a little mess around yourself. So for many years, I grew up just like wrestling in the woods, on fields, and just kind of just tussling around. Nothing really too involved. Did that for years, and it just kept going and going. And then one day I found out there was this community called the Backyard Wrestling Community. And actually my dad introduced me to it, which is really weird because he had downloaded this video called The Best of Backyard Wrestling, Volume 1. It was this DVD put together of American backyarders. Kind of a weird production.
Yeah, Mick Foley's famously a backyard wrestler.
Right, and so it was this weird video that he'd found, and he just turned to me. He's like, "This is backyard wrestling." That was my introduction to it. And I found the community, and then there was a documentary about backyard wrestling in the UK shown on TV. And my stepmom said, "Hey, you might want to watch this." Went upstairs, looked at the TV, and it was literally a city about half an hour away from me. And I was like, "Holy fuck!" Like, there are people near me doing it, but like properly doing it. Like, they're going through tables, they're taking slams on the ground. Couldn't believe it, and kind of slowly eased myself into the online forums, you know, and stuff like that. And then it just grew and grew. And then there's another story. I don't want to keep droning on. I suppose this is an interview with me, but
I got to cover at least an hour, so you can go ahead.
Yeah. So on the UK Backyard Wrestling Forum, which was kind of the hub for anyone in the UK, there was American stuff, but for the UK, you know, you'd make a post and you could have a little picture of you or whatever, and you could have like a signature image as well. Mm-hmm. And someone's signature image was a picture of a move being done onto this like cage structure. And I looked at it and I thought, that looks like a football net 30 seconds away from the house I grew up in. And so I messaged the guy and I said, where do you guys wrestle? And he told me my hometown. Mm-hmm. And it was, I mean, small world, unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And so they said, come up to the show. So I went up to the show, and it was my first real backyard wrestling show. I mean, I had done stuff messing around, but I'd never been slammed down. I'd never taken a power bomb onto the grass, you know. And these guys were just killing each other. And I loved it. And I was like, I've got to do this. And so that's how I kind of got started. And then, you know, you eventually start meeting other people and connecting through the internet, and you just grew from there, basically.
That's incredible. Yeah. Inspirations?
I suppose Mick Foley is probably the biggest one.
For obvious reasons, or just because he's an absolute maniac, or is it connected to the backyard wrestling, or is there other things?
I don't know really. I mean, he was just one of my favorites. So, well, he was my favorite growing up, I suppose. So, his style appealed to me. And
really, so when you watched, you didn't go for Shawn Michaels, you didn't go for Undertaker, you went for Mick Foley, Mankind.
Yeah, the Shawn Michaels thing came later on, actually. But yeah, even when I first started backyard wrestling properly, it was Mick Foley, and I would do the elbow drop, and I would kind of, you know, do the hardcore kind of matches, mm-hmm. which I kind of stopped doing after a point. But there's just something that really appealed to me about the way he told stories in the ring with this kind of extreme violence, and, you know, his character, the whole thing. I didn't really have designs on becoming a character like that, but just the wrestling aspect of it, the brawly fight aspect of it, because, you know, people have different kind of styles that they like to emulate in backyard wrestling, like technical or flipping, mm-hmm. or, you know, and mine was just the Mick Foley, just brawling, you know, fists and, you know, slams and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd say he's probably the number one, far and away.
All right, so you kind of already chiseled away at it, but what is your favorite move / set of moves?
Well, in general, or that I did, or
sure, both.
There's so many answers to that, really. Go ahead. And again, there's moves that I would enjoy to take as well.
Oh well, by all means,
you can go on, but I really like Bret Hart's sharpshooter submission, and I started using that.
To give or take?
To
just
give.
Watch. Okay.
To give, because it was just I used to do that back when I was like 9, 10, like, and I figured out how to do it. I watched him do it over and over again and tried to, mm-hmm. like, I got my pillow and pretended that there were legs on the end. Right, if I just do this, like, and doing it on people in school and stuff. I used to torture my cousin Adam with it. He didn't really like wrestling, but I'd force him into it anyway and just bend him back with a sharpshooter. And then I just started using it a lot more in my actual backyard wrestling. But I suppose I should say that the elbow drop is the number one, because that comes from Mick Foley, because he would do these big elbow drops. And so I started doing them. I got really good at them. And then I got into Shawn Michaels, and he also does elbow drops. So I kind of mixed the both of them, and I would do different styles of them, and I do them like, I liked how you could do it off pretty much anything. So I would try and be creative with them, you know, and do them off like boxes or ladders, or, you know, onto a concrete, you know, things like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's favorite moves. It's a really tough question because there's so many of them I enjoy.
Favorite move
But
to take?
favorite move is probably a power bomb. Like
Really?
it's a pretty fucking dangerous move. Like, and I enjoyed taking it in a way that was kind of painful as well. I don't know. I just really throw myself into it because it got a great reaction. But there's just something
Is it?
about
Well,
the go
all
on.
right, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't a power bomb basically the guy who's power bombing you? He's just kind of lifting you, and then you're doing the rest. Like you're basically getting up for him,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
he's dropping you essentially. Like you're doing most of the work if you're receiving a power bomb, right?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, with most moves, there is that almost 50-50, maybe 60-40 element of cooperation where,
Some it's more than that. I mean, I've given
oh,
a
yeah.
choke slam where it's just me doing this, and the guy's basically I just have to like move his back. That's basically it. Like, all right, you're full like this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
595.
Yeah, definitely. There's always that. Yeah. The scale slides
Yeah.
significantly, but
Sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's fine. Like, it really, yeah, it depends. It really does depend because you can make a move look amazing if you put the movement into it as well. And that's something that we call sandbagging, where the person who's receiving the move just doesn't put themselves into it, and it's just terrible, and it just looks like
Shawn
shit.
Michaels versus Hulk Hogan, the opposite of sandbagging.
That's the opposite, yeah, the overselling. In fact, one of my first matches, I was doing a suplex on this kid. I mean, we were all kids, but this kid he didn't know anything, and he didn't know to jump, and so I almost ended dropping him right on his head, and it just like he just about got over, and it was like.
Wow.
A close one. Yeah, but I enjoyed really throwing myself into moves like power bombs because you can give it that extra flair that makes it stand out and stuff. And unfortunately, in backyard wrestling, that was a way to stand out just by taking moves well. It was quite a very weird bubble of a community, but yeah.
Yeah, I listened to an interview with CM Punk where he said that basically the safety of you're putting when you're wrestling safety in another person's hand is how true is that and how much does that factor into like who you choose to work with? Did you have somebody that you preferred for safety reasons or anything like that?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's very true. I mean, it's the slightest thing could turn the safest of moves into the most dangerous thing imaginable. Like you have to get the timing down, and we would just get the timing down just by doing it and just by trial and error almost, which isn't good in some cases. But so many things can go wrong, and when it comes to certain people. There was maybe a few people I shied away from wrestling, like, oh, so do you want to wrestle? I'm like, because I would know that they weren't perhaps the safest of executing moves.
The Ryback of backyard wrestling.
Yeah, and also some guys had more dangerous moves than others, like, again, it goes back to the styles. Like a guy I used to wrestle, he didn't do any big lifting, slamming moves. He was all technical hold and things like that and fancy kind of technical things. So I would love to wrestle people like that because I wouldn't have to, people smaller than me, I would love to wrestle because I could throw them around and B, they wouldn't be throwing me around that much. But there was this one guy, I tell you what, like, and he was great for what he did, but his finisher was one of the most dangerous things I've ever seen. He literally just picks you up on his shoulder and then slams you right down, and you're supposed to land on the back of your head. Like, I do not know how people didn't break their necks taking it. And the whole idea was that it was dangerous, and I just said I'm never taking that, And there were certain moves which are on kind of a imaginary list where I'm not taking a move like that because it ain't worth it, And so I stuck to that. And one time, I was in a tag match, and these two guys were like, "Do you want to take this move?" And I was like, "Nope, not doing it." And they're like, "Come on, we'll make it really safe." And I was like, "Nope, no chance." And I just so I just didn't even do the match. And so there are those moments where you have to be. We don't have to be, but I felt like I had to be careful. I mean, I did a lot of stupid shit, but I would draw the line at some things and say the risk isn't worth it for me.
What made you what was the thought process behind deciding to do the stupid shit? Like what was your all right, I'm going to do this, but not this. Like when did that change? Did it have something to do with you? Did it have something to do with the wrestler you were wrestling? Like what were the factors that were changing?
Like, you mean my motivation for doing something stupid,
Well,
basically?
like you
Like,
just said that, there's certain moves that you didn't take, but you
right.
also, in the same breath, you said that you did some stupid shit. So,
Okay, right. Well, I think that a lot of it is to do with ego. You want to make yourself seem good, so you want to impress people by taking things that they know are painful. There's
mhm.
definitely that, especially in the early days. Yeah, I'll take a move onto the concrete and stuff, and maybe people will see the video and think that I'm hard. Like that's it. That's just the ego thing. But also, it's to get yourself over within the community, and that's. I mean, I loved everything that I did. There's no point in having regrets, but it's a shame that it was the way it was, because literally it was about who can do the craziest shit, and whoever can do the craziest shit, they get the most respect, and they get the most status in the community. Um,
How big was this community?
I would say, from the early days as I knew it until kind of the last days as I stopped doing it, maybe a couple of hundred people passed through, I suppose. And at its core, I would say 80 to 120 people maybe were kind of, I mean, maybe even more, but there's feds all over the UK,
Mhm.
mainly England, a few in Wales. And so, yeah, all these different, sections of the community. And what I loved was that they all had their different styles as well, and their own different kind of way of doing things. And we would film all our events, most of us, make music videos of the events, put them on the forum. We'd review them, and criticize each other and praise each other. And there would be like this like proper heated kind of rivalries, like literally kind of, we're better than you, no, fuck you, we're better than you. And you'd get these massive kind of online feuds, basically, which
Did you
usually
guys,
faded away once everyone got together and we all had a laugh. But
like, how do you settle that stuff, especially with it predetermined? Like, how do you,
well, well,
especially with ego, like you said.
I more mean just rivalries between single feds. So like, a fed would put on a show
Oh.
and they'd release the video, and they're like, top that, and then other people's like, no, we're the best, and then people would vote on who's the best. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of to do with that, the different kind of feds having their own pride about what they do and things like that. But as for actual matches and things, that was just good. That's another thing that was great about it, was the freedom, was that we were all our own bosses, basically.
Hmm.
Basically, I mean, there were these lower down guys who they would pretty much have to do whatever they were told. But a lot of us, we would call the shots. So it was interesting, though it varied. Because in backyard feds, everything's, there's no limits basically. But halfway through kind of the period, the era that I was in, a national fed was created. It was a National Alliance Wrestling, and so that was very much like almost like a proper federation,
Hmm.
because you had people who were in charge, and a hall was booked every month. Money went into hiring the hall, and so everyone was told who will win, who will lose, and there was a
Hmm.
certain group of people who were selected to make those decisions. So that's when it did get quite strict and set. But as far as pure just backyard wrestling, just doing our own thing, it was all kind of anything goes.
How when you were under, somebody who was making decisions for you, like what was the politics process? What was that like for you? Like, was there, uh, how did one succeed? How did one, if you had, a title, how did one get a title? Like, what were the politics like?
Well, you had to be good to begin with. I mean, that was definitely a prerequisite to
Hmm.
being able to get a title. But they're definitely, it's status, it's social status, and if you're a really popular person and people like you, then more often than not, you'll probably get those opportunities more often. It was very difficult for me because I was, and still am, quite a quiet person in kind of social situations.
Hmm.
I mean, I was terrible when I was a kid, but and that's a great thing about it, was that it brought me out of my shell a lot more, doing the backyard wrestling, traveling around the country every month and stuff, but still quite reserved. And I would kind of speak when I wanted to speak. And there's a lot of partying going on, the drinking, the smoking weed, all that kind of culture. And there was the split as well, the people who didn't do that stuff. And then you'd have this whole stigma of the people who would slowly, start to go over and do some drinking,
Mm.
go over and do some smoking, and suddenly they're getting more matches and stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, you know.
Oh,
And
really? Okay.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. It's definitely. I mean, if you were doing the drinking, the smoking, you're part of the in crowd, and that is definitely you do have more of a chance to get these big matches, I think.
Wow.
But
Okay.
but you still needed to be good. That was still part of it.
Hmm.
And I suppose that aspect was maybe more just backyard, but the national fed was you kind of at the. It depended what your relationship was like with the guy who ran the thing, basically, you know. And he would often bring in these new guys who perhaps weren't the best,
Hmm.
and they would get a title straight away, and be like, oh, okay, well, you know, you know, he picks his friends, and so it was definitely on a person by person basis, but the politicking was definitely there, I think. Sometimes it wasn't a part of it. I think like literally the best people got the titles, you know, and a lot of the times I could agree on that, but there were times where it was like, come on, that's you're going on personal friendships more than who should deserve it, you know, things like that.
Your favorite match that you wrestled in?
Oof. I don't think I have an answer to that one really. I had a few.
You gotta have a favorite. There's no way you don't.
Oh, it's really tough because there's different circumstances.
Well, you can give me a couple of them, like the one that you pulled off favorite move in, the one you got the best pop in, like whatever.
There's so many different ones. There's one match where it's not my favorite, it's not my best, but we did some cool stuff in it, and we did this sequence towards the end where it looked like it was going to be the finish. It's going to be it 1, 2, and then kick out, and people were chanting, "What a match!" And I'd never heard someone chant that before the match was even over. You know, that was like a typical end of match chant. So I was particularly proud of that one. But and it's hard as well doing this interview in particular because you won't know the people or all the situations and everything. But it's really hard. It's really hard. One is you might have seen, I think, the little short film I made about it, the feud and then the match, the one where my face is pissing blood. Nowhere near my best match, but it might be my favorite if I had to pick one, I guess, because it was everything that I liked, which was the story of the match more than the actual match itself. Maybe, I don't know. And it brought that inspiration I had from Mick Foley with the brawling kind of blood feud style, and yeah, that's one of them. It's tough, like, because again with backyard wrestling, I did it for so many years. If you put me in a pro environment now, you know, I would just sink straight away. You know, I don't have all the tools to kind of pace a match properly to professional standards, and backyard was so different. It was a completely different world.
How so?
Again, I kind of touched on it earlier, but like in the world of professional wrestling, to have a great match, you tell a great story. Doesn't matter what moves you do. You know, it doesn't matter if you flip off the top rope to the outside. It doesn't matter if you never do, you know, any big moves, as long as the story's there and the crowd connects to it. Backyard wrestling, it's who can do the best moves, basically.
Okay.
But it works within backyard wrestling because the audience is us. You know, we're entertaining each other. It's we don't have to kind of introduce ourselves to a crowd of strangers. We all know each other, you know, and some of us are rooting for each other, some of us aren't. You know, again, people didn't like each other and things like that. So a lot of times it would be who can do the biggest shit, you know, who can do the most hardcore, you know, or who can just, you know, who can look more like a pro wrestler and have that perfect execution. There's loads of different things, you know, that went into it. But yeah.
Your least favorite match?
Ooh, least favorite match. Let me think. There's got to be one that's just brutal. Yeah, there's a tag match I had, and it was building up to this big angle, and I was tag team champions with a guy that I was going to be having a big match with coming up. And the match there was good stuff in it, but the crowd just couldn't give a flying fuck. And it was at this period in the National Fed where, you know, the days just dragged. Like, we'd be there for 10 hours just sitting around, just waiting for the matches to start. You know, people would go to the shops, and then finally a match starts, and there's only 5 people there, and it was just brutal. And I did this big thing, and I was supposed to jump over one of the opponents and do an elbow drop onto the other guy, and I just misjudged it completely and literally just jumped and just landed flat on my face, and it was just awful.
Oh,
And no
isn't
one,
that documented somewhere? Haven't I seen that?
I showed you that clip, yeah.
Okay.
And the worst thing about it was that, usually when you mess up, you will get the "you fucked up, you fucked up." I didn't even get that. Like, I didn't even get the courtesy of being like, no one even cared because no one was watching. Like, there was one move in the match that was good, and then the rest of it was just, and it kind of, it stings when you put something into a match and you've been slammed down and your body's aching and you're sweaty and no one really cares, So I mean, I've had much worse matches, but that was one that springs to mind where I was hoping it would be a really good one, and it just wasn't.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned having quite a few people at a venue. What does that dictate how you guys communicate at all? Like, I mean, anybody who's watched Botchamania knows that John Cena talks loud, whether it's 100,000 people or what. So. Sport. So
Yeah.
how do you communicate without that many people there to drown out your voices?
That's a really good one. It's kind of like, I don't know, you just have to be good at it, I suppose. You have to be good at masking the
Is it whispering? Do you figure it out beforehand? Is there any sort of anything?
Everyone was different, which is probably not a good answer, but like there were people who would need to go through everything beforehand. Right, tie up, headlock, go down, drop down, duck, flip. We'll do that thing there, we'll do this there, and I didn't like that particularly.
Mm-hmm.
I like planning some things, but I liked kind of letting the flow of it just take us where it takes us. I like just being able to just grab someone, put them in a hold, and just start punching them. Just in any way I feel like, in a way that feels like it's flowing, and but yeah, there's people who would plan everything beforehand, and usually that means that they would mess up something, and then they try and do it again, and everyone's like, oh no, and it's just uncomfortable to watch. And then there's people who can just do a whole match without really planning anything, and those are the real great ones. But you have to be, when it comes to talking to each other during the match, I think that kind of goes on pretty much in any match. There has to be some kind of, even if you know what you're doing, just like, right, well, that bit next, or something like that. And it was all down to whether you're good enough at masking your voice and kind of picking the spots. And also, sometimes backyard crowds would be loud and into it, and sometimes, with long shows, it'd be the quiet moment. And again, it's down to timing. You might be unlucky, and no one's talking, and throw them into the shit, and then everyone hears it. And there were people who were really loud, people who you would think they never spoke, so it was always different.
Your favorite aspect of wrestling?
The wrestling I did, or wrestling in general?
Sure, all of it. What drew you in? Like, what was your favorite in? Or did it change while you were wrestling? Did something change about wrestling, or?
Yeah, sure. When I first started wrestling, I liked wrestling because I thought it was cool, and I liked seeing people getting these kind of. I mean, I knew it was staged, but these fights, because it's so cool. It's this. There's nothing else like it. You watch a movie, there can be an incredible fight scene, but it's been done over like 3 weeks or something. In wrestling, if you pull off like a perfect match, it's like a one take, like it just blows your mind, I think. It does for me anyway, when it's done perfectly. And the fighting aspect of it, just again, brawling, and kind of settling your differences in the ring. I just like, there's something about it that clicks with me. But especially when you tell a good story with it, and there's a good like reasoning behind the match. It's not just two people going, okay, we're going to fight. There's like, the person. I mean, it goes to the soap opera stuff with WWE and things like that. And sometimes they do that in a terrible way, absolutely god awful, bottom of the barrel shit way. Sometimes they do it great and they pull it off, and they put in these little touches that make it work. But still, when I was a kid starting backyard wrestling, it was, I want to do cool moves. I want to get thrown through a table. I want to do an elbow drop off, for building, fucking, just all these cool things. But then as I grew up, I was wrestling as I grew up. That was my whole kind of becoming an adult, was through wrestling. And so my views did change on wrestling. And it was only towards the end that I really started to recognize things about it that were different, I suppose. Like knowing when to do something how to do something, you know, just timing and everything like that. And I wish I'd got that earlier and also been safer because, yeah, I definitely took too many risks. But I'm as much as my back hurts now, I'm still very thankful that I'm not in worse shape. Because I know some guys, one guy in particular, man, it breaks my heart, honestly, because he used to go all in and he has problems now, you know, like head problems, you know, concussions, things like that. And it's not in a bad way. He is in a bad way, I should say. And so I feel lucky that never got that far with me. A couple of close calls, and I know I've kind of strayed off point here, but
I was going to say, so your favorite aspect is what now?
yeah. Well, I'm just kind of, you know, trying to give you as much as I can without boring you. But when you were saying about the moves earlier and like, you know, cooperating with them, safety and everything, the scariest moment, unless that's one of your questions coming up, the scariest moment for me when I wrestled was a simple backdrop. You know, the guy gets behind me, picks me up, lands me on my back. Completely one of the safest moves there is. We mistimed it. And we kind of, oh, wait, no. And then it started to become apparent to the people watching that we were messing it up. And so it's like, quick, just do it. So he just did it. And he threw me all the way up. I tilted way further than I was supposed to. I landed right in the back of my head. My body folded all the way over. And when you pause it, it just looks like my spine should be, you know, gone. And yeah, I was hurt for about a month after that. And that was just freak accident, you know. It's just the simplest of moves. And it messed up big time. So yeah, it can happen. Just simple miscommunication. But my favorite aspect, nice segue, was the community itself and the friends that you make and the memories that I have. Because I tell you what, it's just the funnest time in my life. It was just unbelievable. Particularly that we had these events we did every year. This guy, his dad owned this restaurant with like a lake, a ski slope. And he was just rich, basically. And he bought his son a ring at one point. And so we'd go there every summer and wrestle in this professional ring. It was like luxury. And we would camp out in the woods next to it for like 5 days. Just for the best fun you could ever possibly imagine. It was just like, you know, living the dream. It was amazing. Just the community. And also like the friends that you make are friends that I feel like you wouldn't make in most walks of life, like, or in most jobs or in most social circles, because there were so many different people who did backyard wrestling, people I never would have approached in real life to become friends with in any other circumstance, you know, people who are so different to me in so many different ways, like, you know. And then like there's two people I can think of in particular who just, I would never come across those people normally. And we didn't even meet, we just were booked to have a match together. So we turned up to a show, hi, nice to meet you. Let's do the match. What do you want to do? Okay, we'll do the match. And we wrestle and we click and we have some sort of chemistry where we can do stuff without talking about it. We kind of know where we're going next. And then you just have this bond that's formed, which, you know, it's hard to explain really, but that's the coolest thing about it to me.
I mean, it's not completely hard to understand. You guys are doing something together, and there's got to be some sort of, I mean, it's like dancers, I mean, I've heard stories of boxers who have, you know, grown an affinity for one another because of something they shared in the ring. So, I mean, it's not that hard to understand.
I suppose.
Kind of a little bit of a segue there. This is going to be a kind of a two-haver here. Your dream match within the backyard community and a dream match, just, you know, any WWE or you know, whatever, TWA, TNA, any sort of superstar that you could have a dream match with, who would it be?
I'd love to be a part of the final Deletion Part 3. Have you seen the second one yet?
Delete with the yes with the weirdos, right? The girl, Rosemary's Baby or whatever. It just recently happened, right? Like
yesterday, yeah.
Yeah. I saw some of it, if not all of it. They have Senor in the back of a truck or something like that.
Senor Benjamin. Yes, Mr. Hardy. Right.
I'm digging your grave.
Dream match. Oh, that's a tough one, especially in backyard. And again, it'll be hard to even paint a picture because you won't know the people I'm talking about. But there was three dream matches, and I
Well,
managed to have.
let me intervene here.
Sure.
If you could, and now you know you can only choose one now.
Hmm.
If you could, and I guess you're choosing the audience too, the setting.
Mm,
If you could wrestle Mick Foley in a backyard match, or
mm.
Mick Foley, in an arena of 14,000, what would you choose?
The arena, of course.
Okay.
That's what it's
Okay.
all about, you know.
I
Yeah.
mean, ego speaks. So go ahead.
um, I had these three dream matches like throughout my backyard wrestling, quote unquote, career, and all three of them at one point were going to happen. You know, it was looking good. One of them just fell through, and the guy was like, he had this legendary status in the community. This guy, you know, and he would have kicked my head off. Like he's one of those guys who he'll just kick you as hard as he possibly can. But he was like a proper legend, like again, almost like legendary status. And he just decided not to do it, and that was it. You don't say anything back to it. So the other one I managed to do for my last match last year, so that was really cool. I finally got to wrestle the one guy. But the one that I would say is my dream match was a guy called Dan Selby, and he's the guy, incidentally, who kind of had concussion problems and things like that, and he was kind of the proper, like, and it's weird to say that there are legends in the backyard wrestling community, to call like an 18-year-old a legend, you know, but we're in our own bubble, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd been doing it since like 12, 13 or whatever, and you know, it's weird, you know. When I first entered the community, it was 2004, 2005, and 2001 was seen as like the glory days, like, you know, back in, it was only a few years ago. Mm-hmm. Everything moved so fast, it was crazy. But you would have people who, to all of us, would seem like legends, and he was one of them. He could do anything, and he was basically on my kind of frame of thinking when it came to wrestling, like the Mick Foley kind of bloody kind of, you know, grudge match kind of thing. And so we were going to wrestle, and it was going to be on the biggest show of the year, and I was at my absolute best, and it would have been fucking awesome. It would have been my best match. Then I went out with his ex-girlfriend, so
Ooh.
So that never happened. And then, you know, it took a long time for him to talk to me again. And by the time we had gotten good terms again, he was winding down big time. And then I was putting on a bit of weight, and then he was putting on a bit of weight, and then neither of us are wrestling again. So it just never happened. And so that's one that I really wish hadn't gotten away, so to speak.
And big time.
Big time. Probably Shawn Michaels. Yeah, I mean, Mick Foley was my first favorite, but Shawn Michaels is my all-time favorite for sure. So yeah, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania. You know, this just got to be done.
You're going to WrestleMania match, huh? I see. How's that storyline playing out?
It has to be. It has to be the biggest, doesn't it? You're talking dream situation here.
Oh, so. Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. No, you're right. I'm reading ahead. That's why. So to spoil where I was headed.
Okay.
You talked about, you know, you at your height. Now I want you to try to be as honest as you can. Leave the ego aside.
Yeah.
And for the record, I have an ego too. I can joke because I know that I share it too. So for anybody who thinks I'm fucking with you, I'm not. Honestly, at the height of your career, place yourself on the WWE roster. At your best, where would you fit on an episode of Raw right now?
Shut up. Where would I fit? I'd say in the maybe.
You know, weight class doesn't matter. Like, just, you know, when you were your best, where do you think you would fit?
Realistically, at the bottom, because you have to, again, take into consideration the professional style, the pacing, the knowing where the camera is. All that stuff is stuff that I wouldn't have the first clue about. But if we're talking potential, like if I was allowed to maybe spend a few years kind of going to the WWE Performance Center and learning all the ins and outs, then I would
kind of what I meant.
Then I would say mid card with potential. You know, I definitely think if I had put myself fully into wrestling without taking the silly bumps, without getting thrown on concrete, without, you know, doing all that stupid shit, and had trained and had done it the right way, had been smart about it, then yeah, I could have done something. You know, whether I could have got there to begin with is a whole other thing. But you know, based on the the current crop, yeah, I think I certainly think I would be able to project my kind of my character a bit better than some of the people on there. I don't know. Maybe that is being big headed, but
No, it's not actually.
I think,
That's a factor that people. I mean, there's some people that do it perfectly even. There's some people that have too much of this and not enough strength, and some people that are. I mean, shit, Ryback just he looks perfect, but guy can't. He injures everybody, and he's not really the greatest of characters.
yeah.
But you know, you need to have an ego. I mean, Miz, I buy half the shit he's saying just because, you know, you just believe that he's, you know, he thinks he's that good.
Yeah, the intensity is a big part of it as well, and I think I had a good burst of intensity if I needed to tap into it that I could make believable. Yeah, like I worked one kind of pro match once about 6 years ago. A group of guys had set up a Fed, paying audience and all that. And during the match, like I just rolled out the ring and I just spotted someone in the crowd, this woman, and I just looked her right in the eyes, and I was the heel, you know, and I just looked at her, just dead in the eyes, and she got so uncomfortable and she was like leaning away and she's and then I walked off and I thought, I guarantee you she's going to remember that for the rest of the night. So little things like that, you know, I think I would probably do well at. But, yeah.
I'm gonna make that woman check behind her when she gets to her car tonight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you're retired, right? You're
Yeah.
officially done. So let's just say, you know, Triple H comes across some sort of footage of you, which is out there. There's footage of you on YouTube. Let's just say he stumbles across something and says, "Hey, caught your video. What do you say you come down to Orlando and try out for NXT? We'll give you a couple months to give it a whirl." Do you do it?
No.
Really?
No.
Why?
My head would say yes. My heart would say yes. My body would say no. No. In all honesty, my heart would say yes. My head would say no. As much as I love it, as much as I would have loved to have done it, I don't think the schedule would be for me. You know, it's
Wow.
it's such a, you know, you're talking like over 300 days on the road. I like being at home. I like being, you know, rooted, and I think my passions are more focused on other things now. And I also think that there is so much that the wrestling is going way too fast these days. And speaking to a good friend of mine who's a professional wrestler right now, he's doing very well on the UK scene, and he doesn't like the way things are going now. Like this style of these wrestlers hitting each other so hard they knock each other out because they want it to look really good. And it's like, guys, it's wrestling. It's not MMA. You know, the art in it is making it look like you're hitting someone hard, but not actually doing it. You know, I mean, he's currently out injured now because someone hit him so hard he tore a ligament in his leg, and then he couldn't do the rest of the match and ended up, you know, it's just, I think that, I mean, look at like people like Edge, Daniel Bryan. Were you around for Edge? You know, these guys.
Yeah,
in their
I watched quite a bit when him, Edge and Christian, Hardy Boys, Dudley Boys. I was around for all that when they were in all those matches. I watched every single one of those insane matches, but not for his title run. I was out by then. So I wasn't watching when he got hurt and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Edge, Daniel Bryan, two incredible wrestlers, and mid-30s, done, finish. You know, you cannot wrestle again because you just, and it's just the way that it's been going the past 15 years where you need to be taking these big bumps so often that people's careers are getting cut short, and then, you know, yeah, and I'm definitely a bit of a hypochondriac as well. So I mean, my last match, I hadn't wrestled in 4 years, and I was fucking terrified of like breaking my arm or something. I felt like I've had a good run. I've never broken a bone properly except for my nose a few times. And I just thought it's just gonna be my luck that I'll break my fucking arm my last match or something. And when I finished the match, my first thought was, yes, no broken bones. So in reality, I just I wouldn't have the heart for it, to be honest. So yeah.
Did you have any titles? Were there titles, and if there were, did you have any?
Uh, yeah, with the National Fed, which I think to win a title there was definitely like a, right, you're accepted in the whole community as someone,
Mm-hmm.
well, maybe not in the case of when he brought in a few of his friends and and they won titles, but I won the tag team titles with one of my best friends, and at the time they had only just been introduced, and they actually meant a bit more as well. They'd only been used in big matches, and so that was really cool actually. And I remember bringing the belt back, and I was over my nan's, and she was giving me a lecture about something, and I was like, oh look, I won this, and she was like, oh, kind of changed the tune a little bit about wrestling, like, oh, mm-hmm. Got my granddad in, come on, look at this belt. But and I won other titles in my home fed, but that's so just again grassroots. We're making our own kind of shit. So it was cool that I won the titles there, but the tag title one was one where it was like, yeah, I actually have a title, and it's on the UK wide scale, and it's pretty accepted. That was cool.
Well, what are your theories on? Does the title, does it dictate anything about status as far as as an audience? I know when we watch WWE, it's the guy who's got the belt on, he's the best. Is that true as far as a wrestler is concerned?
In pro wrestling? Okay.
Period. For backward, just in general, I mean, if you had the belt, were you the best? It's
yes and no. It's because sometimes you need to change it up and put it on someone new, and have maybe the best guy chase the title as opposed to hold it. So it does change and things like that. In backyard wrestling, it was not really the best, but you're one of the best. Mm-hmm. I think that would be kind of a prerequisite to do it. I remember once I had a match for the title, the main one, and for like a month I was like, this is going to be awesome, and I was just like planning all this shit, and I was like, right, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, it's going to be fucking wicked. I get there, and the guy who runs it, Steve, was like, okay, you're on first, you got 10 minutes. I was like, I'm on first?
I'm the main event. What are you talking about?
For the world title, I'm on first? And he's like, yeah, he's going to come out, he's going to take the piss out of you and then beat you in 10 minutes. I was like, oh my God. Gutting, absolutely gutting. So I think that was I think I had 2 title shots, but yeah, that was disappointing. But yeah, it varied, but usually it would be, you have to have some sort of talent to be, or perceived talent in the backyard world to be a title holder. As for the pro wrestling, it's really about who they want to be the face of the company, really. So maybe it wouldn't be the best, it could be just someone who has the right look. And
so what are the differences in performing for a smaller and a bigger crowd? And do you have or different venues, and do you have a preference?
I don't think I have enough experience to have a preference, because I think I did maybe 3-4 shows in front of an actual audience, people who paid to be there. And it's completely different, because in backyard wrestling, you're entertaining your peers, the people who do the same shit as you, and so it's harder to impress them. And so when you get those cheers, it's much more earned than a generic crowd, if you know what I mean. But there's a different challenge to entertaining there's a different challenge to entertaining a generic crowd, because you got to do things differently as well. And that was a proud moment, actually. We did this show in Newcastle, up north in England, and it was about 250 people there. None of them had ever seen me before. They'd never seen my opponent before. He went out, and he's like, oh, screw you, and they're booing him. I came out, I put on the red headband, Rambo style. I'm just like, people started cheering. I thought, okay, we're off to a good start. And by the end of the match, people were chanting my name, and that was kind of cool, because it was a challenge again to get them behind the match, because that show was one of the first kind we'd done in front of a live audience like that. Beginning of the show, The owner went out to do a promo, didn't do well. Crowd was pretty silent. Everyone was behind the board, just thinking this is going to be fucking brutal, you know. And even a couple of guys had matches and they didn't get good reactions, and so yeah, it's very different. But I don't have
This is
that much experience.
this is a backyard venue you're talking about?
No, this is it was we did a charity show.
Oh,
There's
okay.
about 250 people there, and just general members of the public. And it was one of the first times we'd ever done that. A lot of us, anyway. Some backyard wrestlers, they like to kind of jump back and forth between backyard and doing actual shows. They'd kind of do backyard wrestling on the side without telling
Right.
anyone. But a lot of us had never done anything like that before, and we were really like, "How's this going to work? You know, how are the crowd going to react to us?" And people went out there, and it was just like you just heard the ring slapping when the moves were happening, but you weren't hearing anything else. And it was like it was getting really, I was getting really nervous. But just by going out and just kind of, you know, it's just pandering to the crowd a little bit. You know, I went to do an elbow drop off the ring, and I was like, shall I go a little bit higher? And the kids start cheering. I go up again. Shall I go up to, you know, so little things like that.
Oh yeah, going into an audience or a crowd that you know isn't really into it, and then turning them is, I think that's one of the better things to do as an entertainer. I mean, you know, killing, you know, having an audience just completely over the moon for you is one thing, but when you get an audience that's not really into it by the time you show up, and then by the time you leave, they are into it. I think that's something bigger than, yeah, because you've actually achieved something. You change
Right.
their mood. It's not like, you know, they were in a good mood and, you know, they're in a better mood. They were in a shitty mood and now they're in a good mood. Yeah, that's just
Right.
my personal opinion. But
Sure.
uh, did you say you preferred the backyard thing because of the
Yeah.
among your
Because
peers?
yeah, because when people react, it's more earned because they do the exact same thing as you, and so they're harder to impress. You know.
Yeah, all right, we're different. I wouldn't want to perform comedy for comedians. That's
I think it's similar and it's different at the same time. And again, like I said, I have very limited experience performing in front of a crowd, and I'm sure if I did more of it, then it might change. But when I did backyard wrestling, it was about the community. There was no designs on becoming a professional wrestler. It was I want to be respected and over in the community, and so that's your goal. And so when you're getting cheers or you're getting people saying, "Oh, that was mental," then that's moving towards your goal, and you know. So.
jealousy never played into any of that.
Oh, absolutely! Are you kidding me?
Well, I mean, that's
So
why
much.
I'm kind of shocked that you would say that, because like I said, I can only use my personal experience as a comedian. Like we'd have these things like open mic nights where it's, you know, essentially, sure, there might be a couple of people that are in the audience, but the comedians in the audience are, you know, it's just a guy waiting for his set. So, you know, 80% of an audience in an open mic night is comedians. And I hated doing that stuff because, you know, there'd be guys sitting in the crowd not laughing because, you know, why am I going to laugh at that guy? He's, you know, he's my your competition or whatever. Like, yeah, I'm not going to help the guy that, you know, I'm trying to compete with. So like, I can't imagine that there being much difference where, you know, our response is basically what you're going for, and they know you're digging for it. So why would they give it to you? So knowing
Yeah.
that, and jealousy is it's just part of competition.
Well, yeah, it played into it a big part, but you know, people would still be willing to get behind you. But I mean, there would be people who, you know, maybe one or two people in the crowd would be, you know, kind of sitting on their hands a little bit and not making much noise. But also, like every time that you go to an event where people are meeting up, like everyone's just so excited to be there, you know, and people just enjoy being a loud crowd member, even if they don't even like it that much. Sometimes that would be a part of it, you know, just let's just be loud, and you know, and that was also a part where maybe lesser experienced wrestlers would go out and have an okay match, and the crowd would react like it was a great one, which I had once, and it gave me so much confidence that I started to believe myself a little bit more, and it helped, you know. So these interesting things happen. But from what I understand, I've heard a few stories, because some of the guys went over to Canada and America to wrestle, and they said, man, the crowds there, they're just not that into it, you know, like do all these fancy moves, land on your head, and it's like, oh, you know, yeah, you know. And remember I was telling you those events that happened with that guy who had the restaurant on the lake, you know, and the ring and the field. One year, some Canadians and an American guy came over, and they were, well, they'd already come before, but they continued to be blown away by the UK backyard wrestling crowds. And one of the Canadian guys, he said to me, he said, "Man," he said, just savor this while you got it, because this is something special. We'll go over all around the America, and we'll do these matches. We'll kill ourselves and get nothing, you know. Here, everyone is going crazy for everyone, and it's just amazing, you know.
Could it be a bit of something that maybe you guys enjoy it because you had to import it? I mean, like, to joke about our personal relationship, but the thing that I'm holding my hand, I can go down the block and find 10 of these. You're gonna have a harder time finding this. So if you got your hands on this, you might enjoy it a bit more than I would. Is it a case of that perhaps, where like it's like, wow, here's that thing that's you know, we've seen on TV, we've heard about from over there. We actually have it in front of us. Let's really, you know, enjoy this. Could it be something of a, you know, you don't know what you got until you don't have it, or you don't, you know?
I don't know. It's an interesting point. It's interesting how we never changed it from backyard wrestling, because that's such an American term. But I don't know. Maybe there's some truth to that in the beginning, but you know, after a certain point, you know, things just become so connected with the internet and stuff. And again, American guys would come over and so on, and that would be special. But I don't know. There's just something about the UK BIW shows that were just, you know, for the most part, they'd be duds. There'd be bits where maybe people weren't into it as much as usual, but you know, most of the time when everyone's getting together, and that's another thing. There's two different backyard shows. There's one you do at home and you're home fed with your home people, and a lot of times those shows aren't that exciting. They can be, but when you're going and you're traveling to London, or you're traveling to somewhere like Manchester, Newcastle, it's more of an event, because everyone's congregated in this one place. Everyone's spent money to take a train, to take a bus, to drive up, and so it's almost like maybe, you know, I have to enjoy this because I've taken my weekend off or whatever, or I've sacrificed this and that to come to the show, so I've got to be into it and things like that. But generally, I just think everyone really liked each other mostly, and when you like someone, you cheer for them more. But you know, like going back to the jealousy, that was definitely a part of it. So there would be people that perhaps I wouldn't really get involved in their matches that much because I didn't like them, and I'd just be like, you know, I'd be like, why is everyone going man? And sometimes you could see me in the background of the videos, just like hands in pockets, like people jumping up in the air and stuff, and I'm just like, you know. But the jealousy would sometimes drive the competition between everyone as well, to who could do better every time. So it was kind of a healthy jealousy in most of the time. Sometimes not so healthy.
Did you have entrance music, and did it change? What was it over the course of time? Did you have a favorite song?
Do you mean did I have entrance music, or do you mean did we have it in general?
Both.
Okay. A lot of times we're just wrestling in a field, so no entrance music. And there would be people say, "Oh, let's bring a portable CD player, and it would be fun for 5 minutes," but we wouldn't do it every show, so no. But
yeah, that's the American part. That's the more about the show and less about the act.
I'm trying to think when we did have some sort of sound system set up at one point in the National Fed.
I was gonna say, you've had to, at least for like shows for a couple of hundred people, you have to have some sort of
I mean,
showmanship.
I've definitely had it. I had the main one I used was a song called "Out of the Shadows" by I think it's like a power metal band or something like that. I used it in a video about 11 years ago, and the guy who runs the National Fed, he loved that song that I used for that video, and he said, "You should use that for your entrance music when you join the National Fed." Because that's another thing. When the National Fed started, I wasn't good enough to be a part of it, you know, and that they would be select, you know. Not everyone's invited to participate. You can come and watch, but so it took me about a year to actually get on the roster, so to speak. But he's like, "Yeah, you should use that for your entrance music." So I did, but most of the time with the National Fed, he would put the music on afterwards. He would release the full shows and put the music on afterwards. But there were occasions where we had it coming out and stuff.
What were the variances of sizes of the wrestlers? Did you have, like, I mean, you're a small dude. I mean, for wrestling, you're not big at all. You're Spike Dudley as far as I'm concerned. What were the variances of size of the wrestlers?
You know, my size, you know, it would be kind of like middle range, maybe, I suppose, in UK backyard wrestling. Taller guys, not that tall though, you know.
Hmm.
I think that there was a couple of guys. So there was one guy, this real character, a massive Scottish guy, like just humongous. He used to have to buy two plane tickets every time he flew down from Scotland to London. That's how big he was.
We got it.
He was one of a kind for sure. But mostly, you know, we were small, I suppose, and there was only a couple of people who were a bit bigger, and not even many people who kind of worked out that much, you know, to the point where they even had a physique. So, you know, it was again definitely something that professionals would look at and just scoff at, you know, oh, they're weeds, you know, it's like stick figures. But yeah, so I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anyone who was really small. Not really, I suppose. But yeah, there wasn't really many of us who were big.
Mm. Back to the music. If you know, going back to your dream match with Shawn Michaels, what at WrestleMania, what is the song you're coming out to?
Oh God, I don't know. It would depend on the match. It would depend on the story, you know, because I could pick the perfect song. But
You've got a 3-month lead-in with Shawn Michaels. It's your third pay-per-view. It's a WrestleMania main event.
I tell you what I do. I come out to "For Whom the Bell Tolls" by Metallica,
Wow.
and just to fuck with Triple H, and I'd make sure that the music stays on the DVD this time, because he came out to "For Whom the Bell Tolls" at WrestleMania 27, and on the DVD it's like just generic stock music, and it's fucking terrible because they couldn't afford to pay Metallica, obviously, to keep using it.
Huh.
But that is actually the song I used in my final match. I didn't want to, but it was the best I could pick at last minute's notice. I prepared some special entrance music, and they couldn't use it on their sound systems.
Why couldn't they use it on their sound systems?
I think it was uncompressed. It was FLAC or something like that, and so it just didn't. He didn't have a player on his laptop that could play it, so he's like, "Well, I got all these albums." I was like, "Oh, Metallica then."
I'm fine. I guess I'll come out to the Smiths then. Whatever.
Excuse me. One time I had extra special music, and I really enjoyed it because it was a slow Pink Floyd song, and I was like the biggest. I was the biggest heel going into this match. I was fucking taking people out with hammers in the build-up, so I was just like I was genuinely getting heat, and so I put together this piece of music, and shall I let you get over your little laughing fit?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm laughing at a slow Pink Floyd song for wrestling. I'm gonna come out to Morrissey.
Well, it's a really angry song from The Wall, but it has a real slow lead in, and I literally was stood behind that curtain for about 1:20 or something. And I knew I was pissing people off, and that was the fucking point of it. And then it kicks in, and then I walk out and people are booing, and I was just like, yeah. It's just like, you know. So it was nice to do little cool things like that, but typically it was the Out of the Shadows song, which I really like as a cool song. But yeah, entrance music.
And a wrestler that you're most like if you had to tell somebody this is what I'm like, what professional would you say? If you want to know what I am, look at this guy.
I've got no answer for that. I can't even.
You have to watch him and be like, wow, we're actually kind of alike.
No, I don't. I you know, I borrow from so many different places. It just becomes a mesh of emulation. I don't know. I can't. I can't just pick one thing. You know, I could say, oh, Bret Hart, because I used to do the sharpshooter and technical moves, but that was the only aspect of me that did stuff like that. You know. I used to do really good elbow drops, but that's about it when it comes to someone like Shawn Michaels, you know. So
Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and Mick Foley in a blender. That's basically what you.
No, not even that. That would be overstating it. I don't know, or understating. I can't think of one
misstating
person. Misstating it, yeah, whatever. Like I got no good answer for that one. I can't, and it's not because there's no one like me, but it's more just No, there was no one like me, and that's probably a good thing. I don't know. Because I never really stuck to a particular style. Like there were guys who were just like they had their thing and they would do it, you know. And I do the same kind of moves, but you know, I would switch it up. I would, you know, try and do technical sometimes, try and do different things. So, you know,
Mhm.
it wasn't really a style; it was just a mismatch. So,
What did you attribute your look to? You have this awkward, black shirt, black short, not short. Oh, what is your look, and how did you come to create that?
the awkward look.
Yeah, I can't even explain it. Like I don't.
How's it awkward? Just from
I don't think
comparison.
wrestling. Like I just think like, oh, he was working construction and just somehow.
Right, yeah. That's another thing with backyard. You know, that to me, when I think backyard wrestling, I think a hoodie and some like you know just some track bottoms. Like you know that's what a lot of the guys used to do, and it was an interesting transitional period as everyone was getting older and better. People started wearing elbow pads. People started wearing knee pads, shorts. People started getting tights made. You know, people started getting singlets and all this kind of stuff. And I never went in for that. I just stuck with the the basic kind of attire that I always wore, which was just black pants, black t-shirt, and there was the t-shirt. It was one that I used almost in every match, and it was a story behind it, and I wanted to use it one day in this epic kind of promo, but it never happened.
All right,
I'm
well,
not gonna,
you
no,
have
I'm
you have
not,
the screen now.
no, I'm not gonna tell you. So it was red and black, and so I would go with the black elbow pads and the red wrist wraps, and that was it. You know, like again, people would try and look more like a wrestler. The furthest I went was elbow pads and a bit of wrist wraps. You know, just that was pretty much it. And I stuck to it because at the end of the day, it's backyard wrestling, and so I'm not trying to be a professional, and so I would pretty much stick to the same kind of thing. And it wasn't really. I liked it to have some sort of uniformity to it. Uh,
Mhm.
I liked it to kind of at least make sense, you know, that all black and then red on the shirt, red on the wrist wraps.
Mhm.
Um, but I didn't go. I mean, I used to wear white kick pads sometimes as well, but that was just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen videos where there's quite a bit of white in there.
Yeah,
It's like,
the generic white kick pads again. That's very backyard wrestling. You know, you wouldn't really see that in professional wrestling. Just cotton kick pads basically. But yeah, the look was just let's just have some sort of theme and that's it really. And kind of I would change it up every now and again, but usually stick to the same thing. The shirt was it was a hand me down. It was a hand me down t-shirt. I'll go into it. It, I don't like to get personal about some of these stories, but I thought that I would.
who knows?
I gave you the hook, so I may as well
Pay it off.
pay it off, right? No, it was a hand me down from one of my dad's friends who killed himself. Yeah, like dark, right? But like, and he was someone who literally he'd gone a little crazy in his later years, and I wanted to really go dark on something about this is why I'd worn this T-shirt, like seriously, and but it never went anywhere, and it was probably a good thing that it didn't. But I was ready to pull out at some point, and it was just one of those T-shirts. I got it, and I just thought I'm going to wear this when I wrestle, and that was it. So there you go. There's your story.
So, are you holding back because you're speaking to me and my
No, that's no,
personal experience?
that's literally the story.
So how deep are you going to go into it? You're going to when you
It's
the colorful aspect of the nature of the shirt or the history of the shirt, should I say?
I'm wearing the clothing of a crazy dead man. Like that was going to be the angle that I was going to shoot for at some point, and try and
Mhm.
work it in somewhere. I almost did once, but never quite did. And so, I mean, when you're that young, the poor taste of things like that don't really enter your
Oh
mind.
yeah, yeah. No,
Uh,
when you, I feel like between 16 and maybe 20 is when you're like, oh, I'm gonna make somebody like scoff. That's what I'm gonna do. And
yeah,
like
definitely.
it is true. Like what makes you you know get off, so to speak, isn't it's not the right thing. It's offending people, and I know I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, the history of of your career, I mean, you mentioned you didn't come out right and say that you have regrets, but if you could, in a perfect situation, how does your career play out? How does it, you know, what happens? What, you know, you could even go 20 years in the future. What is the perfect scenario for that career? Does it become a professional career? What, like, and what decisions do you make along the line that you need to change to play into that?
Uh, I don't quite like with backyard wrestling. You mean, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if that's you want there to be a backyard wrestler for all of ever and not
Right. Okay.
progress into
I
anything. I
get you.
mean,
I get you. No, I always saw it as it always had a shelf life to me. And a lot of guys would, excuse me, losing my voice. A lot of guys would retire, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
this was the go-to like attention play. Oh, this is my last match. I'm not I'm not going to do it again. Jesus, I need some water.
All right, so just to buy time for Luke here, while excuse me, Sandog, while he can take a sip of a drink. What I used to do, just to again buy time, to be a hard ass when I was a stand-up comedian. My first couple of shows, I said, you know what, I'm gonna get them scoffing right as I come out there. I'm gonna let them know that I'm an edgy dude. I'm a hard ass. So I would come out, and the first thing I would say is, "Do you know what sucks about having a big dick?" And then I'd look around and say, "What? I'm asking." And I used to think that that was the coolest thing to do. And then, like,
Yeah,
it took me a while. I was like, "You're just a fucking idiot. Like, why are you doing that?" So, yeah,
yeah,
that's another moment of just being a dumb idiot, late ladder teen.
sure. Right.
Sorry.
So
So
no, it's fine.
back to the just trying to buy time.
It's my vocal cords fault. Some reason they're failing me. Yeah. So what was I even going with it? Backyard wrestling. Da, 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 da. Yeah, coffee. There's definitely some coughing. Yeah, I saw there was a shelf life to it, and some guys would retire. They'd be like, right, this is my last match. Even a documentary I made about one of the wrestling events, there is a retirement speech in it. He continued wrestling for years, you know, and it's like, oh, this is it. It's been a long road, you know. Oh, thank you everyone for it's been such an amazing. And everyone's like, oh, thank you, chanting and all that stuff, you know. And then they'd wrestle again in a couple of months. And I did that a couple of times. I didn't do the big speech or anything, but one time I was like, I'm done because I thought I'm hurting myself too much, and I had other plans for my life, which completely flopped as soon as I had that match. So I was like, this is my last match. I'm going to go all out, and I did. I really hurt myself in the match. And then my other life plans fell through, and so I thought I still want to continue doing this. And then you get some kind of not scorn, but like people wouldn't take you as seriously anymore. People would be offended that you'd kind of gone back on your word.
Mm-hmm.
But I never saw myself doing it much longer than the age of about 20, 21, you know.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and that's when I had my last run, I guess, when I was 21, you
Mm-hmm.
know, regularly. So I did one match when I was 22, I did another match when I was 23, and then another one when I was 27. So, you know,
27 is a little bit after 21 for the record.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, that was the thing where my last match at 23 was terrible. It wasn't terrible. It was good, but I was out of shape and stuff, and I really wanted to get back in shape, lose some weight, and have a really good match. So that's what I did. So goal accomplished.
So wait,
But
so your perfect scenario for the career would be what you retiring at 21 then? Is that what you're?
no, well, I don't know. I mean, I would have preferred to have better matches. I would have preferred to have gone to the top of the community and be recognized as the number one guy. I think everyone would have.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few guys that I wish I'd wrestled, all that kind of stuff. You know, I wish that I had not let certain personal things get in the way. Well, I don't know. Maybe you
Well,
know.
do you think that there's any moments in particular that on January 7th at this day, on if I had done A instead of B, something, this path would have been.
Mm, maybe. Like I said, the thing with the ex girlfriend of the guy who I started seeing, you
Mm,
know, looking at it now in the grand scheme of things, yeah, I probably would have just like not gotten involved with that. Just had the match, and things would have been very different,
Right.
very different. And I probably would have gotten the respect that I so foolishly craved, when really it wasn't that important, I don't think. But yeah, that was one thing, but it happened, and it was what it was. But there's nothing like there's little things. There's little things. I had this great match once, and I fucked up the ending. Fucked it up. It was one of my best matches, and I messed something up at the end. People were laughing, you know. And so when the match was over, they weren't thinking about what a great match we just had. They were thinking about, I can't believe Luke did that. What a fucking idiot. And I was just, you know. So little things like that sometimes they crop up, and it's like, man, that match could have just, you know, I could have really rounded that off by having that smooth ending and not completely stalling the whole thing. So little things, you know. But I mean, yeah, I never really saw myself doing it much longer than early 20s. Though the Canadian guys I mentioned earlier who came over to the UK, they're still doing it now. I think they do it kind of semi-professionally, you know. But I mean, they're in their 30s now. People do it longer. And I have no idea what the backyard wrestling scene is like now in the UK. There might be a whole other group of 100 people doing it right now.
So you're basically saying that it was always going to be backyard wrestling. It was never going to be, you know, in a ring. It was always about doing it in a backyard.
No, not necessarily, because again, transitional periods. I think we all started out just doing it on grass, bumping on ground, which is the worst fucking idea ever. It will ruin you. Bumping on uneven, muddy, hard surfaces. Like, what were we thinking? And then people would build ring bases, get some tires, wood, some carpet, bump on that. It's like a cloud. It's amazing. And then people would build actual rings out of wood, and they were terrible, but they had, you know, 4 sides, and, you know, had string, and, you know. And then guys like who I mentioned earlier, his dad bought him a ring. And so we would start wrestling in proper rings. And so there was that kind of moving forward aspect of it. And some people did try and start their own proper fed that would have paying members come in. There was 2 guys from the backyard wrestling world. They poured all their money into buying a ring, getting the venue sorted, and I wrestled on one of those shows. And it lasted about 3 or 4 events, and they weren't even breaking even, so it collapsed. So there was some sort of aim there, but, you know, different people have different goals and dreams. A lot of the guys from the backyard wrestling world, they went on to, you know, be professional wrestlers. So some people have that goal to transition over, some people don't. And I knew that even if I wanted to, I'd already done enough damage to my body that I probably wouldn't have a chance, so I didn't.
So there's, I mean, obviously, just if you had done things differently, more safely, what do you think you'd still be wrestling today? Would you have wanted to? Going back to my little, you know, vanity offer of Triple H saying, "Hey, come down to Orlando." If you know, if you do things properly and don't hurt yourself and fuck up your body so much, does that change, you know, the way this little fairy tale scenario plays out?
Yeah, if I hadn't done the damage, if I had been safer, maybe I would have continued, and who knows where life would have headed and things like that. But, you know, a lot of my good friends are wrestling now, and sometimes I just think, man, it'd be great to be doing it right alongside them, you know. And so maybe if, you know, again, to repeat myself again and again, if I hadn't done all the stupid shit and hurt myself, then I might have pursued it more than, you know, I did, for sure. I mean, at the time, you know, I was like, you know, I've hurt my back and it's aching all the time. I shouldn't really continue. I've done the damage. I would like to, you know, be able to play with future kids and not get, you know, backaches and all that kind of stuff, which I probably will still get anyway. Right. Literally, I was just doing the dishes and my back was fucking killing me.
Yeah, you know, I was rear-ended in a car accident and it screwed up my back. So it doesn't have to be wrestling.
I mean, it's a lot better now. I've recently been doing yoga and stuff, and it does help actually. So I'm thankful it's not as bad as it was when I was really inactive, especially a few years ago. And my knees were really bad as well. They're a little bit better now. So yeah, I got off light, I think, considering the stuff I did. But yeah, maybe I would be alongside those guys now, but yeah.
So basically, you know, uh, health permitting,
Yeah,
if things played out, you would at least entertain the idea of it today
yeah.
if the
Well,
right opportunity came along, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think health permitting, but also brain permitting. Like mentally, because the last match I had a year ago, I was achy as hell the morning after. I was like, oh, I do not miss this feeling. But when you do it over and over again, that feeling diminishes.
Mm-hmm.
Your body gets used to it. I know right now I could probably wrestle another like 300 matches if nothing went wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's that back of the mind thing. Something could always go wrong at any moment. And that thing I was talking about earlier, where I got dropped on my head, and I don't know how I didn't break something in my neck doing that. And
Right.
so there's always going to be that part of my psychology where I'm that hypochondriac or the worrier, where I'd be like, oh, I could get hurt. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite have that fearlessness that I had in my youth.
Yeah. So that wraps up my questions. Do you have any sort of advice for somebody that doesn't know exactly what they're interesting, they're a bit more interesting than the casual viewer, they'd like to
Mhm.
entertain the idea of maybe doing it? Do you have any sort of advice for any kid, young adult, what have you?
Yeah, do it properly. It's fun as hell to do it with your mates, but you really shouldn't, I think. As much fun as I had and as amazing as it was, I wouldn't recommend. I mean, if I had kids and they said to me like I'm going to backyard wrestle, I'd be like, no fucking way. Which is I don't know, hypocritical of me, I suppose.
You're
Like
such a wet towel. What the hell? What a
no, no,
downer.
no, because no, seriously, I just because I know what the risks are, and I've seen people get really hurt.
Hmm.
Like fucking one of the Canadian guys who flew over. They had this big match. He took a simple roll into the ropes. It was nothing. He lost all feeling in his legs. Right. I mean, talk about one of the most like right back to reality moments I've ever had
Hmm.
in my life, where everyone just thought, "Fuck," couldn't feel his legs. Now it was a stinger, which isn't that big of a deal. I mean, it happens and it's not too serious, but just that kind of I can't feel my legs for those few minutes was just like fuck. And yeah, I would say that the best bet is to be trained properly and to be safe. Obviously put yourself out there a little bit, maybe put your body on the line somewhat, but do it at the right moments. Because I was taking bumps that, you should probably save for something like WrestleMania or something, in all honesty. But when you're doing it every single week in front of 5 people, is it really worth it ultimately? And maybe it was, because again, I had all the great memories and friends and stuff, and every bump along the way was a part of that story for me. But I don't know. I feel like you should just do it properly and go to a school and you get further with it as well. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
what do I really have to show for it beyond saying, oh yeah, I used to wrestle in fields and stuff, and a couple of times in a ring. Whereas you can actually achieve something and make a living out of it as well. So,
Right. Well, and lastly, summarize your career in as short a sentence, paragraph, word as possible.
uh,
I'm not
summarize
saying
it.
that because of time. I'm just saying,
Sum it up in one
for
word, quick.
for dramatic effect.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an incredible roller coaster of emotions. No, it was it was a hell of a way to spend my young adult life. It was it was just full of everything. It was full of everything you can imagine, like full of laughing so hard that you're just crying tears and you can't breathe. It was full of being scared for your fellow mate who just hurt himself and broken his arm. That was a moment early on. Oh, it snapped off. Someone call an ambulance. Like, oh my god. Pure terror at times. There were some incidents, maybe not wrestling related, that were just fucking horrifying. And I don't know. Just it was a great thing to be a part of, and just good memories.
And lastly, what I normally ask most of my interviewees, because the channel is Will I Like It, who would you say, you know what, you should check out some Sand Dog backyard wrestling matches too?
Um,
To somebody who say, will I like your matches? Who would you say, you know what, you should check this out?
what, people who I don't know?
Yeah, like just a general. If you like blank, you would really enjoy watching my matches.
I don't know. Beyond showing people I know, to kind of maybe stroke my ego a little bit and show off. I don't really. I don't see any market for it. I really don't. I just that's the.
Well, thank you for putting grounding behind the fact that I interviewed you. I don't know who would want to watch me. What the?
Yeah. Well, no. It's just no. I can't answer that question really. It's hard to imagine. It's something that I can share with people who I know, who may be interested in seeing that other side.
Well,
But
you have it out on YouTube, so it's not like it's this dirty
sure.
secret.
No,
So
no, definitely not. But I can't see anyone independently finding that footage and finding it all too interesting. Because I think a lot of the times, what really is enjoyable at wrestling is knowing the person who you're watching wrestling, knowing something about them, being familiar with them, and so with me, it's different. It feels like an age ago. It was about 10 years ago, but it just feels like a whole other life. So outside of anyone who was there at the time or people who know me now and may be slightly interested in things I used to do, I just don't really see there being much of an audience for it. So that's just but feel free to go and watch it if you want.
wow. Well,
it's the hard sell.
Yeah, so I want to thank you, Luke, for joining us. Do you have anything to say before we go?
Not really.
Any other downer things you want to tell people that there's no God? You want to?
No, we'll stay clear of that, I think. But
no Santa Claus, no Easter Bunny.
You can check me out on Facebook, MySpace, Bebo, and any other social media site of your choosing that you may be interested in. Vine, Snapchat, I'm on all of them. I love it. Always on the social media. Instagram. Did I mention Instagram? I'm on there twice.
They could join your subscribers, right? If they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. That's the point.
Okay. All right. So Luke, aka Sand Dog, yes. AKA Razor Wire Reviews. Shh. Thank you for joining me.
No problem.
So until next time, we'll see you soon.